here today with a very dear friend of mine, Tony Maugere. Tony, in a nutshell, give us a little background about Tony.
Recent graduate of MacArthur High School all the way back in 1991. Been working in this industry for a little over 20 years now. One job, same practice, watched it grow from a small chiropractic office in 2002 to 7 offices, multi-specialty, everything from orthopedics, physical therapy, chiropractic, massage, interventional pain management, you name it, we do it. But in brief, before I did this, I met Dr. Gelch through a unlikely position. I was injured at a Home Depot, ended up taking a position selling hot dogs with those hot dog carts that you see out of there, and meeting all sorts of community, doctors, lawyers, lay people, electricians, you name it, and came across Dr. Gelch, and he offered me a position, said, hey, listen, I'd love for someone like you to help me grow my practices. You got,
You got the gift of gab.
Not an easy disposition. You talk well. We were talking sports. We'd talk, he'd come up every Tuesday and Thursday for months and months.
Was he eating the hot dogs?
He was.
Because,
Yeah, 2 dogs with sauerkraut, brown mustard, and a cream soda.
Because I have to let everyone know, Dr. Gelch was my roommate in college. And we used to go toe-to-toe on our physiques. And I didn't realize he was eating those hot dogs.
Well, however he was able to manage it, he still kept that physique, but it would like clockwork, man. I knew it's right before I'd open, I'd see him walk through the door, and I'd be like, oh.
Here he is. That's an easy sell.
This guy's going to ask me to, close up shop and come with him. And, literally a year of him being consistent, I finally just threw my hands up in the air and said, all right, make me an offer. I'm ready to come.
What a blessing to him.
I'll tell you what, to both of us, in hindsight, it being 2020, but yeah, it worked out great for both parties. We've been able to help each other out.
So for 20 years, you have been involved in the practice with Dr. Gelch.
Yeah, that's going to go on 21 here soon.
21 years, you've been here in South Florida.
Yes.
Multi-Care Medical, Pembroke Pines. And you're also located 6 other locations around the state of Florida, and I believe out of the state as well, correct?
Yeah, we're on the East Coast, we're on the West Coast, we're in the Northeast, Massachusetts area. So
if you're injured or you just need proactive maintenance to make sure you don't get injured, there's probably going to be a location somewhere in South Florida that you are going to be in close proximity to a multi-care medical facility.
Yeah, we're Dade, Broward, Palm Beach, the West Coast, Naples, Fort Myers region. We're Vero Beach and moving, toward the Palm Beaches. So yeah, and correct, we don't just treat accidents. We treat major medical patients. We treat sports injuries. We treat workers' comp. We treat auto. We treat, a little 90-year-old lady that brings us the tray of lasagna as a form of payment. We don't discriminate. We make it work for anybody because accidents don't discriminate.
So when we talk about treat, let's talk about maybe someone who's never been to a multi-care, either a chiropractor or a medical doctor or even a physical therapist. If I needed to either have maintenance or feel like I'm getting a little older, I think I need to be more limber, I need to maybe get an adjustment, or even if I've been in an accident, what would be the first thing that I should do to contact multi-care?
Well, you're accessible through many different ways. We've got 800 numbers that are toll-free. We've got direct lines that are easy to remember, 954-441-PAIN or 441-7246. Call any of our locations. We have centralized scheduling. Let us know where you live in close proximity to either work or home, and chances are there's a location close to where you live or work. And what we'll do there is schedule you for an appointment. If you're a major medical patient, we'll get your insurance information, verify your insurance, let you know beforehand if you have a copay, if there's a deductible, so there's no financial surprises. You come in, 9 times out of 10, you'll either see an orthopedic PA or an orthopedic nurse practitioner for your initial consultation, and then they'll evaluate you and determine what is best for you. Is it chiropractic manipulation? Is it stretching and strengthening through a physical therapist? Are you injured because of a recent pickleball move or a tennis court? We're seeing those accidents time and time again.
So my first go round at pickleball, Tony and I grew up on Hollywood Beach, so I've been playing paddleball on Garfield Street my whole life. So I'm good with a racket, but I had never played pickleball. So a bunch of friends of mine on my swim team asked me if I wanted to join this tournament. So I showed up about 3 weeks ago, and make a long story short, I didn't even know the rules, believe it or not. My first competition, it was doubles. I said, look, folks, make sure, whatever the rules are, let me know. I'm not going to cheat here. I just don't know the rules. Bottom line is, the next 3 days, I could barely move. And here's a guy who thinks I'm in shape. I swim all the time, work out, whatever. But, you do something that the body's not used to, you could be in great shape on Monday, play pickleball on Tuesday, and be hobbling on Wednesday.
Well, the ironic thing is that pickleball was somewhat designed to alleviate the perils of tennis over 40 or 45, right? So most people that play tennis love it. They play it 4 or 5 mornings a week. And so now pickleball was designed to allow people to lay off the knees and the shoulders. But what we're finding is that people in their 50s and 55 and 60 are playing it and have the same bug that they had for tennis, but are just overextending themselves. So between the shoulders, mostly shoulders, getting thrown out because, it's different. You're whiffing at that ball like you got a tennis racket in your hand, but you've got basically a table tennis racket with a ball that's similar. I just think of it as ping pong, but just on the ground, and so we're finding the rolled ankles and the shoulder issues. But the great thing is people are getting back into the game in a very short period of time because of the physical therapy and the rehab. So we strengthen and we show them how to avoid these injuries, and then some maintenance care along the way to keep them on the court.
So I'm going to throw a plug to Lewis. Tony's got an unbelievable physical therapist over there at his office that people are clamoring to see. We've got people in this office that literally will travel from East Fort Lauderdale all the way to Pembroke Pines, which is, for you, Armando, which is about a half hour, just to see Lewis day in and day out. And they've got incredible people over there, incredible. And you don't have to be involved in a situation that's an emergency, or if you're just feeling like you need to make sure that the next time you play pickleball, it doesn't exacerbate an injury or something you might have had dormant for many years. I was stupid. If I knew any better, I would have fully stretched. I thought, pickleball, what's the big deal? You're not really moving that much, but here we are.
Yeah, no,
in our 50s.
It's true. And, Lewis, excellent. And you're right. I've got guys calling me up, trying to get 2-hour sessions with him when we've got 30 patients in the floor. He's so good that it's almost causing a little riff. I almost need to make his own little private practice on the side where, if you want the VIP, you got to sign up for Lewis. But we have excellent therapists throughout, techs, therapists. But yes, my own mother, who comes in for some plantar fasciitis, asked me, "Is Louis going to work on me today?" So he is it's like that call waiter, at the fancy restaurant.
Yeah. So John, I meant to ask you, if I had an accident or an injury that happened maybe on a Saturday or a Sunday, are you guys open on the weekends?
We're open on Saturdays by appointment only. Sundays, we got to allow the staff just 1 day of rest. But we are able to be contacted. So say, for example, God forbid you get into an accident on Sunday morning, you're coming home from church, or synagogue, or wherever you're coming from, you can reach out. The phones get forwarded to my personal cell. I pick it up. I can give you some instruction over the phone. I can have the doctor possibly call you in an anti-inflammatory, or maybe do a Zoom call to see you on Sunday so that we can get you going so that by Monday morning, you're able to get into the office. So
there you go.
Yeah.
So 24/7.
24/7.
If you have an issue, maybe we won't be able to see you on a Sunday, but we'll have you lined up before the break of dawn on Monday.
Absolutely. And listen, there have been times where, Dr. Gelch or Dr. Ibsen, I'll follow up and say, hey, the patient's acute. They don't want to go to the ER, and they'll stop what they're doing and come down and see him. Now, you won't have the luxuries of a full staff being there, being greeted by a front desk person. So we're scrambling to help you fill out.
But just the ability to be able to see a doctor without having to wait 7 hours in an emergency room by someone is not qualified to treat an orthopedic or a spinal injury or whatever it is that may be bothering you is a blessing. Is it not?
And most guys aren't, they don't still have the love of medicine and the concern, which should always be the first thing, is patient care first, right? I got to get to the patient, not, well, I'm sorry, I'm on my boat in there right now, and I'll catch you on Tuesday when I have office hours.
Well, I can tell you, and we're going to get into a little bit about how Tony's office and Dr. Gelch and I and our office do business together, but I can tell you that any client that I've ever sent to this office gets a phone call immediately by either Tony or someone else and is hooked up and arranged to see a physician within hours.
Yeah. I was literally on the T, pulling my luggage in, trying to figure out which direction I was going just last week when your office referred a case, and, was asked, as I do with all of your clients, hey, get this guy in. He's injured. He's hurt. He needs to talk to somebody now. There was no, hey, sorry, I'm trying to get through the security. I'm fumbling luggage, calling him, 1 foot on the train, 1 foot on the escalator, and got it done.
That's how we roll.
And, patient was extremely happy, got scheduled. I think he came in that day at 2 p.m., arranged transportation for him because his car was damaged after his accident. So it all worked out, and he was very happy.
So let's get a little personal for a minute. Sometimes when people see doctors, they feel that doctors are aloof, that they don't understand, they're a little jaded, maybe have seen too many injuries, too many people. On a personal level, I think you'd agree with me that Dr. Gelch has had some of his own issues, medically speaking, and completely has the empathy that a physician would need to understand what people who are sick and injured may go through.
Which 100%. So listen, he's, without exposing any of these things, but yes, over the past 21 years, I walk into the office, I see the same guy that I saw 21 years ago, excited about healthcare, excited about treating patients, following up, wanting to know. Like, he's not the guy, and I experience him with my own primary.
He's gained a few pounds, so let's be honest.
You know what? He has, but in a good way. We go out, I'm on a little high myself here, just recently lost 107 pounds, excited about life again and the ability to be mobile and healthy and everything. You'd think that'd be kind of a big deal. We go out together. It's, damn, Bruce, you look great. It's like, Bruce always gets the compliments. He's a lot taller than I am, blonde hair, blue-eyed. But nonetheless, his drive for the idea of, following through. I go to my primary. He's looking at the chart. He does not remember one thing we talked about, and I was there 2 months ago. So I have to remind him, hey, do you remember this? Do you remember that? Oh, I'm glad to see your cholesterol drop. I'm glad to see the medications that I prescribed to you are working. Well, I told you I was never going to take those, doc. I've been doing X, Y, and okay. But Bruce, well, if you tell him the name of your goldfish, he'll remember it the next visit. Like, he just pays attention.
What a bonus for a patient in today's modern medicine.
100%, because listen, the way it's structured in this country now, it's very difficult to manage a practice and to treat these patients and to give them the care that they really deserve because of just how everything is being so squeezed and bottlenecked. But it's not that way, which I think is why we have the retention and we have the patient base that we have. We're still seeing patients from 30 years ago.
How about insurance? Let's talk a little bit about, whether or not someone has insurance, what kind of insurance you would take. Do you turn people down if they don't have adequate insurance?
No, I can't remember ever turning a patient away. Okay, so we're going to start with all the necessaries. Do you have a primary care? Do you have a major medical insurance? are you either a workers' comp or a personal injury patient? So these are 3 or 4 ways of the practice being reimbursed for the services they're providing. If the patient comes to me and says, hey, I was walking down the sidewalk and I saw your 4 bays and all these different services you offer, but I'm recently laid off. The pandemic has really put me in a bind, but I've got this sciatic nerve that's killing me. They're dragging their leg into the office. Well, then I talk to them about a hardship agreement and some programs that we have for patients, because Dr. Gelch feels that as part of his calling of being a physician, that, sometimes you got to give some services away or give them at a very reduced fee, right? So if there's no value to it, then maybe they won't treat the way they need to get better. But if there's enough value for them to say, hey, this is actually making a difference, and it would have been $165, but he offered me a tremendous discount in an effort to get me to where I need to be so that I can go back to work, or I can sit in a car, or I could drive an Uber, or whatever they're doing.
Sure.
And yeah, we do that not all the time, but when it arrives.
And I'm sure people recognize that, you have to keep the lights on. You have to run a business. Doesn't pay for Dr. Gelch to go out of business so he can't treat people.
Right.
But the bottom line is that you're there to help and to work with people.
100%. We're not afraid to give back when the time is presented.
So let's talk a little bit about what I do for a living. As a personal injury attorney, I have the ability, usually a injured person will call an attorney before they actually see a physician. And many times, if not all the time, the lawyer is in a position to refer business to physicians in the community. Why is it, and why would I choose Multicare Medical as opposed to the other maybe hundreds of doctors that I can choose that are at my disposal?
You're 100% right. I mean, we all have multiple options to choose from. What I have found is over time, the majority of the attorneys that the practice has worked with we keep seeing the same names over and over because of the service that we provide. So, number one, we make sure the patient gets in immediately. Number two, we make sure that we're documenting the injuries for the attorneys so they recognize what happened, when it happened, how it happened, why it happened, etc. So you go to a primary care doctor, he's going to give you a 6-week prescription for an anti-inflammatory and probably never see you again. Well, that doesn't solve the problem or diagnose the injury and how it took place. We methodically diagnose that injury and we make a timeline so that they understand, hey, on this date you had an impact. On this date you suffered a whiplash injury or a strained sprain or whatever the diagnosis may be. Sometimes they're a lot greater, a herniated disc, a bulging disc, maybe you have a fracture in your vertebra. These are all the things that we notice, and if they didn't have it prior to coming in, and now they have it, it's got to be documented and documented properly. Secondly,
so documentation, sending to the right facilities with the right doctors that understand that insurance companies will take advantage of poor documentation,
of course,
and it will hurt your client's case if you don't send it to practitioners who will spend the time. You don't get paid extra for spending that time.
Nope.
But you know how critical it is for the lawyer, myself, to make sure that I'm sending it to a provider who recognizes that it's really important for me and my client that the medical care and treatment is properly documented.
100%.
Okay.
Without that, you're doing a disservice to the patient and ultimately to the attorney, because their job is to fight for the patient's fullest opportunity on a recovery. And without getting the right documentation and people actually paying attention to the notes, then you may miss that opportunity. So now you only get one swing.
So I'll get a client that comes in and they'll say, Larry, I hate doctors. I'm just going to go lay in bed and this thing will pass and get better. Why is that? And of course I tell them, but I want the people that are going to watch this to hear it from the physician's point of view. Why is that a horrible thing to do in reference to me being able to do my job and properly document so that I can do my job to make sure that my client is properly compensated for the extent of their injury.
So two reasons. First of all, because, as a medical administrator, we think of things from the medical perspective first, right? Ignoring symptoms or masking symptoms by laying at home because of, having a white coat, phobia, or, afraid that it's going to hurt before you get better. It's like anything else, ignoring the numbness in your left arm and the tightness in your chest. Probably not a good idea, because then you have an evolution of what could have been resolved or fixed sooner than now get worse. Number one. Number two, the reason why that's not a good idea is because if you put off treatment, now you have a insurance company whose main job is to deny your claim. So their immediate response is, well, how injured can you be if you stayed at home for the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks? Obviously, you can't be that hurt. So if you're not that hurt, then there's no real value to your case. So here's your $500 offer, go away, and that's that. As opposed to someone who's proactive and actually documents, and we address what injury happened and can attribute it directly to the cause, which happened within 24 to 48 hours of them seeing us, then it's fair to say that it's very difficult for them to deny your claim and your consistency of treatment as to why you're coming in.
True story. Have a childhood friend. First name's Mitch. We won't say his last name because of confidentiality purposes. He's my insurance agent. Gets rear-ended. 3 days later, comes to my office to talk about my insurance issues and tells me about his accident. And I ask him if he's seen a doctor, and he's complaining about stiffness in his neck. He tells me no. I immediately send him for x-rays and to a doctor, and he's got a fracture in his neck. Okay?
Happens all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Here's a guy that should know better.
Right.
And forget about lawsuit, no lawsuit, claim, no claim. He's walking around with a time bomb, driving, not walking, but driving a vehicle. God forbid he would have gotten involved in another accident. Okay. His physician at the time tells him that, puts him in a full neck brace and tells him he cannot drive a vehicle for 6 to 8 weeks until this thing heals, because he's got a potential big problem.
Right.
God forbid he gets an injury while this thing is healing.
Right.
Another injury. So another reason why immediately you should be checked when you're involved in a situation like that.
100%. There's something called hidden injuries, and those injuries take place all the time, right? So you're involved in an accident, your testosterone, your estrogen, everything is elevated. Your body is masking what is taking place because it's doing what it's supposed to do. All those endorphins pushing the pain down. 12, 24, 36 hours later, now that you're kind of relaxed, and now you start to feel, God, why does it feel like I got hit in the back of the head with a bat? Why is my low back? I have numbness in my leg. Well, now these are the telltale signs of what really took place during your accident. But most people don't listen to their bodies the way they should, or they think it was for some other reason. So we do that all the time. That's the reason why the first thing you do when you come in is you get a full x-ray from your neck to your pelvis and everywhere in between, because we want to make sure there's no hidden injuries that can't be seen or to a visible examiner.
2 weeks ago, Larry Moskowitz, a personal injury lawyer, walking back from the beach, 7 o'clock at night, just went for a walk, had my headphones on, walking by a guy. He's coming towards me. He's got a dog on a leash. Dog attacks me.
Huh.
Bites the living S out of my leg. I do a somersault. My glasses go flying. My hat goes flying. Long story short, I didn't feel a thing until I got home. 20 minutes later, hour later. All of a sudden, my leg is throbbing. Okay, so true to true to point here, that adrenaline was flying. I didn't even realize I was bit.
Right.
It was, here I am in my mid-50s, first time ever getting involved in a situation, minding my own business, dog attacks me.
So why do you think the insurance companies, the first question they ask you is, how you feeling? Because they know what the answer is going to be, and they're trying to get you on record to say, I feel okay. I'm okay right now.
Right.
Well, they know that because of the time period, which is why the law states that you have X amount of days after you've been involved in enough
Great point.
to realize that you're injured, because you don't, you could be in shock. There are some traumatic injuries where cars are completely totaled and the guy's standing on the side of the road, looks like he's fine. He's just in a state of shock, and it doesn't hit him until...
You know what happens a lot, Tony, is when my clients go to the emergency room and the doctor is really honing in on a specific injury, let's say a neck injury, where they think there's a real possible injury there, bad injury, and they spend all their time working on their neck, right? Because the patient, my client, is, screaming about their neck, and the patient client doesn't realize, because of all the things that are going on, that there are other injuries there.
Right.
So they leave the emergency room. A week later, their lower back's killing them, their ankle, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a real issue. And I always tell my clients who are going to the doctor to literally start from the top of their head to the bottom of their toes and make sure you articulate to the physician, whether or not it's an emergency room, whether or not it's in an office visit, everything that's been bothering you from the day or from the minute that this happened.
Yeah, no, it's true. And even in my own office, when they're filling out paperwork, they're so concerned about either a neck or a shoulder, it's very difficult for them to differentiate the two. Sometimes it's not the shoulder, it's the neck, but it's radiating down into the shoulder. And then 3 weeks later, they talk about their low back. But if it wasn't done at the initial exam, which is why there's something called diagnosis pointing, where you can actually point to the area that is injured, treat that section, and then address the next section. But, that's why great follow-up and re-evals are very important, so that the doctor is constantly asking you, how you feeling, what's going on, anything else hurting you today,
and I forgot to mention, I know we talked about insurance, but, because we've been doing this so long, we forget that some people don't know that we have currently no fault PIP, and that their medical bills will be paid by their first primary medical bills will be paid up to 80% from their insurance, from their automobile. So let's just talk about that for a minute, because most people that are driving around without health insurance may not realize that if they're involved in an automobile accident, that their medical bills are going to be covered when they go to your office.
Right. And you'd be surprised, many of them have no clue. So when we explain to them after that initial phone call, please bring in a copy of your automobile insurance card and your driver's license, and they ask, well, why? I have Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have to explain to them, Florida's tricky the way the laws are written and how you qualify for coverage under the personal injury protection law. So when we tell them that you have to make a claim on your insurance in an effort to get a claim number so that you have up to $10,000 in medical benefits, whether it's my office or the dentist in case you broke your tooth, or the hospital because you had an emergent care, wherever you're going, this is how you pay for it, because your health insurance is not obligated or responsible to pay for the automobile insurance. And once they're, enriched and enlightened that this is how it works, then we let them know the process or help them out with calling, getting a claim number, etc. One of their biggest, pushbacks is my insurance going to increase? And I tell them, the only way your insurance can increase in the state of Florida is if you change your qualification. You're either a Class A driver, a Class B driver, a Class C driver, or they decide to just raise the rates across the board because of whatever reason. There was a storm last year. They have the ability to raise rates across the board. But as an individual, you're paying for insurance. the whole idea is if you're not at fault, some of these gimmicks, second chance this and, accident forgiveness that, well, that's what they're paid. That's why you're paying a premium every month,
I never, ever understand why people are so worried about their insurance rates increasing when the whole point of having insurance is for that exact moment that just occurred to them.
Right.
They have an injury. You paid for premiums in case you have an injury.
For years.
For
premiums for years.
I just never understood.
Yeah. So I explained to them the argument is very simple. I even have the statute that talks about they can't raise the rates based on an accident that you were not at fault in. It's just, they can't do that. So you call the insurance commissioner and do whatever you want if that was the case. Or guess what, guys? Turn on television. For the one carrier you had, there's 8 other ones that are out there that are giving you a $595 discount to switch. So, it's not something that you need to be loyal to them because they're certainly not going to be loyal.
So let's talk about the elephant in the room. We've just gone through a legislative session that Florida had horrible law to begin with, probably one of the worst in the country, and now it's even gotten worse for victims and people that have been injured as a result of the negligence of others. And just to recap, Florida was a comparative state, pure comparative state law, which means that if you were a person who was injured, who had any percentage of fault in your own accident, you could still recover damages. So an example is you were involved in a slip and fall, let's say at a supermarket, and the jury said, well, the supermarket should have done a better job of making sure that floor was clean, but you shouldn't have been wearing flip-flops. So we're going to say that you're 60% at fault and the supermarket is 40% at fault. Prior to January, you would still recover 40% of what the jury found as the money damages of your injury. Now, as of January, we are a state that is sort of a blend between comparative and contributory negligence. So, if currently the new law, if you're 51% at fault now in the state of Florida, you get 0 award. Now, there's no accident that insurance carriers realize that a great portion of the population in Florida is elderly. And we have a lot of elderly individuals who have slip and fall accidents. Now, as a practitioner, as a lawyer in this space, I have to think twice about whether or not I am going to represent a client who has a slip and fall accident, regardless of what their injury is. Fractured hip, fractured arm, brain injury. Because my concern is that after putting all our time and effort into a case and money and putting someone through the rigors of a potential lawsuit, and possibly they have some exposure, that being my own client, of whether or not a jury is going to find that they're less than 50% negligent. How are you, as a practitioner, and treating people that have been injured as a result of others' negligence, how are you feeling this, and what are your thoughts about what has just transpired in the state of Florida?
Well, you've explained the new legislation perfectly. I've followed it tooth and nail because it was going to make a huge impact on how we are compensated for the services that we provide for these patients. And we treat these patients just like we treat a full-fledged insurance-paying patient, right? So our treatment doesn't change because we're not getting paid. And we run the risk of treating these patients for months, sometimes a year or more on end, all the way and up to surgery, if it's medically necessary, on our own dime, in the hopes that if there's a recovery, we get somewhat compensated. Don't even get compensated for our whole bill, but we, adjust accordingly based on the needs of the attorney and the client as far as what monies are left to go around for them. Obviously, hoping that the client gets the most money for their pain and suffering. And at least we cover our nut for providing the service for them and getting them back as close to back to better as we can. So we've never allowed the insurance companies to dictate to us how we're going to treat patients. We're still treating the same. The quandary that we're in is how much of ourselves can we put out without knowing what the recovery is going to be, right? And so I don't think we're going to know that until 6 months, maybe a year into this, where we get some judgments, we get some rulings from the judges to say, hey, this is not making sense. This isn't going to work. Someone's got to look into the legislation a little deeper. It may even be a little unconstitutional. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I can just tell you as a layperson and someone who lives in the state of Florida and witnesses these accidents on a daily basis, I think it was a detriment to the constituents of Florida because it's going to cause a major problem and back up this system where people are going to be on the hook financially for their own medical bills, not receive the care that they deserve because the hospital's not going to do that. If it's not emergent care, it's get in, get out, and go see your primary.
Oh, you're hurting? Too bad. Here's a prescription.
Correct.
See you soon.
And you get 6 days worth of that prescription, by the way, maybe 3 days.
See you later.
And then you got to go find somebody else that's going to be reluctant to write you a script because now they're going to say, well, I'm not really sure. So it was a very poor decision. However you look at politics in this state, and it's one of many that were just one after the other. And sadly, it's more toward political gain than it is for how can we help the state.
And let's face it, the lawyers are easy targets. The lawyers make too much money. The lawyers are driving this. Lawyers. Fraudulent claimants. We're staging accidents. We're pretending we're not injured. We're pretending we're injured when we're not. And the doctors are performing services that are not warranted, making up diagnoses that don't exist. And we have a crisis, folks. We have a crisis.
So all points driven from one party in particular, and that's the insurance industry, who whine and cry every year that these things are taking place, yet continue to post record profits quarter after quarter after quarter, don't want to pay when there is a flood or a hurricane or a tornado or anything that's causing, our rates to constantly go up.
And here, we're citizens. Do you think your rates are going to go down from the new legislation?
No. How about, did anybody read the paper? 14 days after the bill was passed, they were asking for a 17% or 20% increase after they just got a break. Listen, I don't feel bad for them. They're in the business of printing money, and the way they make money is by denying, delaying, and not paying what their obligations are. So.
See, my problem is that because I went to law school, I'm no longer a citizen. I'm a lawyer with an agenda. So I could scream up and down, left, right, and no matter what I say as an attorney, I can't check my attorney badge at the door, can't take my degrees and burn them. They are what they are. My credibility, the minute I open my mouth about these issues, is tainted because the insurance industry makes it seem that because the lawyers are committing this egregious fraud and bilking the insurance industry, even though there's hundreds of thousands of lawyers in every state in the union, and it seems like other states' lawyers are doing just fine, and the legislation is just fine. It seems only maybe Florida lawyers are doing this. I don't know. Maybe because, we like the sun. I don't know what it is, but that's my issue. I have this forum here. I've got this podcast, but unless I bring someone in who's neutral, okay, so it's tainted.
Right.
And that bothers me because I've been doing this for 33 years and I've seen the horrors that people have gone through with lack of insurance, lack of compassion, lack of medical care, on and on and on and on. And every year it's the same thing. It's let's nibble, let's see what we can get away with. Let's see what we can get pass. And for the most part, it's gone unnoticed by the public. What is disturbing to me is that there should be a screaming and an outcry from the public. You know, folks, us lawyers, we're going to make money. Let's face it. I'll find something else to do, right? But what about the victims of these incidents that happen? They're not going to be able to go anywhere.
I don't know if you saw, I think I may have even shared it on my social media at one point, where the victims had a right to make a statement, those who have suffered catastrophic injuries through the, being creamed by an 18-wheeler, all the other issues that the state has that, the governor, all of a sudden, because 2 years prior to this, none of this was an issue for the governor. Only in his now most recent attempt to make a run for the White House and to get insurance backing through the providers that can finance him for his campaigns is all of these things are concerned. So everything that they laid out on their platter of wants and needs, he pretty much did because they're going to line his pockets potentially, all the way to Washington.
I just don't understand why people are not.
But they did. But they did. That was my point. They did scream, and they did have valid arguments, and it fell on deaf ears because his cabinet and all of the people that he instructed were, it was, you could have been up there with your son who was, dying and say, but sir, please don't do this. And they'd say, ma'am, your 20 seconds is up. Thank you. Just
let's make a point here. The bottom line is this is not a political forum. This is not a political speech. There are many people in my office that are, let's just call it what it is. They're Republican. Okay? We're not saying that it's a Republican issue. We want fairness. We want
100%.
We want people to have their day in court. We want people to be compensated for the injuries and the wrong that they've suffered. People out there that don't deserve compensation, that are not injured, they don't need to come to this office because we're not gonna represent them. Same for your office. So where do we go from here? I mean, what do we do? I mean, we can vote all of these people out that came up with these laws, but again, it can't be my side. Can't be the lawyers. The lawyers can't be the ones that fix this, because if you go on social media and you see what's being said about lawyers, I put an ad out. We also do property damage, as you know. I've been doing hurricane catastrophic losses for 15 years. I've been all over the country. And we put an ad out there, and you had to see what the people were saying.
Oh, the comments.
The comments that were made. It's like, are you kidding?
It's almost like entertainment anymore for me, because I actually look, whenever I see more than like 25 comments, I'm like, oh, let me see what they're saying. And you could almost predict that couch potato guy behind the microphone that's, all of a sudden an expert on all things, everything. So, you got to take those things with a grain of salt. But whether you're, a lawyer or a judge or a senator or congressman, everyone has the shtick. If what's the big saying? If a lawyer's lips are moving, he's lying. It's just like, well, why?
I'm going to leave you with this, and I want everyone who watches this. Last night, so I'm a member of the American Policy Association, and we have a gentleman that runs that association by the name of Doug Quinn. Thank you, Doug, if you're watching. Doug is not in the industry. He was just he was an individual who was terrorized by the insurance industry as a result of Hurricane Sandy. Came out with this. For several years, we've been running around. We have many members. Last night, he was able to get Lester Holt to put together an NBC expose. Please watch it. It's on YouTube now. It was on last night, 6:30, regarding what the insurance companies are currently doing now and the claims that are not being paid as a result of Hurricane Ian. Also, we started an investigation, not we, but Doug and the association, with adjusters who have put in their claims on the other side. Okay, these are adjusters working for the insurance industry who have had their estimates altered by the insurance carriers fraudulently and left their names on it. So we are starting to make some hay, but it's just not enough. We've got people have got to be in the know. It's these kind of things that, look, anyone that I wish there was a call in, anyone wants to debate this issue with me, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Listen, you know it.
All right.
Back and forth.
So Tony, once again, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Larry, for having me.
Multicare, how do they get a hold of you? How do the people get a hold of you?
You can call us at 954-441-7246. Find us on the web, multicaremedicalcenters.com, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. Everything is multicare.
And congratulations for the 100 pounds.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
This guy is
still working on it.
Every morning.
Yes, I am.
Every morning, nonstop. A machine. Good stuff. Okay, and again, Larry Moskowitz, WindyLaw.com, WeRepresentYou.com, and a shout out to Dom. Dom, when you're old, and that's Tony's son. Come over here, Dom. Come over here. Come here. I was gonna ask your dad about his family life. Here's one of his wonderful, wonderful, beautiful children, and we're gonna close out here. I gotta read this, so bear with me, Dom. Welcome to Damage Control with Larry Moskowitz. This is my friend Tony's son, Dom. We are tackling the challenges and triumphs of navigating life's unexpected twists. I'm your host, Larry Moskowitz. Join me while we engage in conversation with experts and professionals from various industries. We'll explore how they bring clarity, support, and solutions to those facing unexpected setbacks. Together, we discover the power of resilience, resourcefulness, and rebuilding. This is Damage Control with Larry Moskowitz. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Damage Control with Larry Moskowitz. I hope this conversation left you inspired and equipped with valuable insights. Remember, life's challenges can be overwhelming, but there's always a path forward. If you found this episode helpful, make sure to subscribe and share it with others. Until next time, stay resilient, stay proactive, and keep seeking solutions that lead to brighter days. This is Larry Moskowitz signing off from Damage Control. A shout out down, say, see you soon. There you go.